Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. I just want to thank all my old subscribers and welcome my new subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified when I upload videos. So the weather is changing. It's getting cold nights and some days too in my area. And we're feverishly trying to get everything out of our garden canned up and preserved. Home can preserving as far as dehydrating, whatever the case may be. So I decided to throw something else in the mix. We use a lot of evaporated milk in our house. 9 times out of 10 we don't do fresh, and if it is, it's probably almond milk. We don't normally do cow's milk, but I decided to try to can some evaporated milk or regular milk and make it into condensed milk, evaporated milk. Not condensed milk, evaporated milk. So we'll see how this goes. So here are the 2 gallons of whole milk that I bought. It's just the regular store brand. It's not anything fancy, and I'm going to take this out of the fridge and let it sit on my counter for about an hour, hour and a half. This new fridge is really cold, so probably about an hour and a half before I get everything ready and set to can it. So I am gonna put my jars in my oven to sanitize. They're already cleaned. I washed them in some warm soapy water with some vinegar, and I'm going to put them in my oven to sanitize. I'm not sure how many I need, so let's get started. So my milk's been out for about an hour and a half, and it's still sort of cold. It's not really cold, but it's cold. And then I have my pressure canner here with the water in it, and then I have my lids in the back, and then my jars are completely cool because I wanted them to be cool because my milk is cool. My water in my canner is cool, like room temperature. And I wanted everything to be about the same temp. I don't want anything to be really hot and anything to be really cold. That's why I put my milk on the counter to sort of warm it up to room temp. So let's pour my milk into my jars and see how many I can get out of this 1 gallon. So I have my jars filled up here, and from 1 gallon of whole milk, I got 9 pints. So 9 pints equals 1 gallon of whole milk. So that means my second gallon, of course, hopefully will have the same amount, and I'll get 18 pints all together. And I did leave 1 inch of headspace on each jar. So now I'm going to wipe my rims with a paper towel that is damp with some vinegar, not wet, because you don't want to spoil your milk. So just barely wet, very damp, not wet, with some vinegar just to make sure my rims are especially clean because I want to get a good seal. So now I am putting on my lids that I have warming in a little bit of hot water. It's not boiling, it's just hot. People say you don't have to do this step, but I do it anyway just to ensure that I get a good seal on my jar. And I am taking the excess water off because I don't want that to be dripping into my milk. So I just take a clean paper towel and dab the bottom side of the lid, trying especially not to touch any of the rim or the underside of my lid with my fingers because I don't want to get any additional oil on them from my fingers, and just placing it on my jars. And then once I've done that, I'm going to screw my rings on fingertip tight. You don't want to wrench these down, you just want to screw them on fingertip tight. And I know this is something I struggle with and siphoning, so I'm trying to doubly make sure that I don't crank them down. So into the canner they go. My water is in the bottom, and again, it is room temp. So I want everything to be room or as close to temperature as possible. So here is my second layer, and there is my last jar set in. And now I'm going to get my lid on. And when I was putting my lid on, I was lining it up, but it would not close. And then I looked here, and the vent was popping up. So at this point, you don't want to force your lid. You want to look for other issues. And mine was this jar here was actually preventing my actual lid from closing. It wasn't catching. So I just moved my jar over, and then I put my lid back on, and it closed with no problems. So if you have this problem, don't force it. Look for something that might be blocking it on the inside. Just a little tip for you. So now I put my canner on heat. I put it on high, and you want to do this until it vents. I don't know if you can see this. You could probably hear it. It's going to vent for 10 minutes, and you want to have a steady stream of steam for 10 minutes. And in my case, if you will look here, we actually catch the vent popping up. So that means all the steam is released, all that air in your canner is released, and it's ready to start the canning process. So now you can put on your weight, bring your timer, your pressure up to whatever pressure you need it for your altitude, and then start your timer. So now I'm going to place on my regulator and wait for the pressure to build in my gauge up to 11 pounds of pressure. 11 pounds of pressure for my altitude above sea level. So once that comes up to 11 pounds of pressure, I'm going to decrease the heat to keep it at a constant 11 pounds of pressure, and then set my timer for 15 minutes. So now my pressure has built to 11 pounds. I have decreased my heat. I'm doing that right now. This part you have to kind of gauge and kind of figure out how your stove works. So it took me a couple of times trying to get this right, but I finally did, and I put a dot on my stove. So my stove has an extra dot, and that's where I put it, so I know it will stay at 11 pounds of pressure. It's okay to go up a little bit, but you never want to let it drop below what it should be for your altitude. I never want it to drop lower than that. So mine stayed right at 11 pounds of pressure for the full 15 minutes, which I was grateful for. So once your processing time has finished, you want to turn your stove off and leave it. Do not open the gauge. Do not take the weight off. Just leave your pressure canner until it comes completely off of pressure and your gauge is reading 0 and your release valve has dropped down. Actually, at that point, that's the only time you could open up your top. So I just offset my top a little bit for about 5-10 minutes and let my jars acclimate to my room temp. I don't take it completely off immediately. I wait for, like I said, 5 to 10 minutes. And then when you open it, you want to open it away from you. So now my jars are out on the counter. I'm sitting them on a silicone pot rest. You don't want to sit them on a direct cold surface because you could crack your jars at that point. And I'm actually going to cover mine for the 24 hours. And this some peppers I did earlier in a canning section in my small batch canner, my electric canner. And I want to do these, leave them on the counter overnight, just let that seal get a good grip on those jars, and then I'll come back the next day and clean it all up, anything that might have spilled or anything like that. So those are my evaporated milk. I will say they look darker than I anticipated. So this is my issue that I have all the time, siphoning. As you can see, my jars did leak somewhat, and as you can see, my water is quite milky. Yes, so I had some siphoning results. So I have a can of commercial condensed cream here, and then what I canned up yesterday. And I'm going to say right now off the bat, the color is definitely darker. So they all seal, by the way, so that's a good thing. The consistency is not as thick as the, so I'm gonna pour a little bit in these containers, and as you can see, maybe not, that's the commercial one. This is the one I canned. You can see it's quite a bit darker. It smells the same. Taste okay. A lot sweeter. Did that? Not sure. Probably. Not sure if they add sugar in this. Milk. It doesn't say sugar. It does list sugar, but I mean milk has sugar in it. But it doesn't say added sugar, but it's definitely sweeter. It's definitely a sweeter taste. Let me angle you down so you can see this. See that? That's the commercial one. This is the one I canned. And I would say this one, the commercial one's a little thicker than this one is, but I mean, it will do the trick. If I can do this for pennies on the can, then yeah, because the generic one was 75 cents or thereabouts, and I got the gallon was $2.49, so yeah, work that math out. And I got 9 pints, and this is a 12-ounce can. 9 pints in a gallon, so I got 18 altogether. So yeah, a lot cheaper doing it this way as opposed to buying evaporated milk, which is, we do that. I use it for cooking, I use it for baking. Hubby uses it in coffee. We use it sometimes in lieu of milk in our cereal. But yeah, this is definitely a saver of some serious money. All sealed, all washed up, clean, ready to go into, well, I have to label them, ready to go into my long-term storage pantry, which is a nice cool place in my basement. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified when I upload videos.